Elizabeth Siddal, the tragic muse. Author and artist Charles Ricketts once said of her, "Oh, we have all, when young, been in love with Miss Siddal." Elizabeth Siddal was born on the 25th of July 1829 into a working-class family in London. In 1849, while working as a hat maker, she met a man named Walter Deverell, a pre-Raphaelite artist, who gave her her first job as an artist model, describing her as magnificently tall, with a lovely figure and a face of the most delicate and finished modelling. She has grey eyes and her hair is like dazzling copper and shimmers with lustre. Evidently the beautiful Siddal had enamoured the young painter. Over the next few years she sat for a number of artists, including William Holman Hunt and John Everett Millais, appearing in some of the most famous paintings of this period. But she wasn't just a beautiful muse. She was a talented poet and artist in her own right, and it's the poetry that came out of her tragically short life that I want to focus on. Siddal met famous artist and poet Dante Gabriel Rossetti in 1849 through their mutual friend Deverell. They fell deeply in love, and by 1852 the pair were engaged and Siddal began studying under Rossetti. John Ruskin, who supported the pre-Raphaelites, provided Siddal with a stipend to aid her with her painting career. During this period, the pair seemed very happy. They became completely absorbed in each other's company. They coined affectionate nicknames for each other such as Guggums and Dove. Elizabeth's work was flourishing, and Rossetti obsessively sketched Siddal in her everyday life, sitting, reading, doing her hair and even painting. He ultimately created thousands of sketches of her. You can tell looking at these sketches how obsessively in love with her he was, and Elizabeth too in her later poems reflects how she idolized Rossetti initially. This happiness was not to last, however, as Rossetti's upper-class family strongly disapproved of the match, in particular his sisters, one of who was the famous poet Christina Rossetti, fiercely criticized Siddal. As a consequence, he decided to delay the marriage, and the love soured between them, as Siddal feared that he would replace her with one of the many young muses that caught his eye. She would face bouts of ill health and depression, eventually becoming addicted to laudanum. In 1857, Elizabeth left Rossetti to attend art school in Sheffield, living with her cousins. Not much is known about her for the next few years, but in 1860 Siddal's family contacted Ruskin to let him know that Elizabeth was gravely ill. Ruskin relayed this news to Rossetti. Rossetti then rushed to her with a marriage license, and they were married in a private ceremony. Siddal was so ill at this point that she had to be carried into the chapel. However, after the marriage her health improved, and they were able to honeymoon together. During this time, Siddal became pregnant, although the pregnancy would result in a stillborn daughter, which caused her to fall into a deep depression. By 1862, she had become pregnant again, but on the 10th of February, Siddal took an overdose of laudanum, ending her life. The couple had just attended a dinner with friends, and Rossetti attended his weekly lecture after dropping Elizabeth back home. When returning from the lecture, he found her unconscious and couldn't revive her. He called 4 doctors, one after the other, unable to accept the news that she was beyond help. It has been debated whether her death was deliberate or not. It was ruled as accidental, but has been alleged that her husband, Rossetti, found a note pinned to her nightdress with the words, "Please look after Harry," her invalid brother. Rossetti removed the note and, showing the note to his friend Ford Madox Brown, was advised to burn it in order to protect her. For in those days there was serious religious and social stigma attached to such an act of self-destruction, and Siddal would not have been able to be buried in a Christian grave had the truth been known. After her death, Rossetti felt enormous guilt and grief and created many more works of her in her memory. He buried a book of poetry with her in her grave, which he later agreed to have retrieved. The book contained a sonnet sequence called The House of Life, which seems to be the story of his love with Siddal. The fact that he interred the poems with her body is as though he was putting their love to rest. Rossetti had notable affairs with his muses after Siddal, but he never married again, and in 1882, 20 years after the death of his wife, he succumbed to his own drug addiction, chloral hydrate, and died at the age of 53. His body was interred in the family grave alongside Elizabeth. If we read Siddal's poetry, we can hear the voice and the human being behind the beautiful painted facade. She was a talented but tortured individual, worried that Rossetti's love was not as deep as her own. She highlights these concerns in her poem, The Lust of the Eyes. The Lust of the Eyes, by Elizabeth Siddal. I care not for my lady's soul, though I worship before her smile. I care not where be my lady's goal, when her beauty shall lose its wile. Low sit I down at my lady's feet, gazing through her wild eyes, smiling to think how my love will fleet when their star-like beauty dies. I care not if my lady pray to our Father which is in heaven, but for joy my heart's quick pulses play, for to me her love is given. Then who shall close my lady's eyes, and who shall fold her hands? Will any hearken if she cries up to the unknown lands? Whether these fears were justified or born from a misunderstanding, only they could know. But the fact that there was a great deal of love between them is evident in their poetry. For Elizabeth, perhaps, the true love came at the beginning of their relationship, before things soured, as she describes in her poem, Worn Out. And tragically for Rossetti, the true love came after he'd lost her, as we hear in the heartbreaking poem he wrote after her death, called Without Her. I will now read these poems. Worn Out, by Elizabeth Siddal. Thy strong arms are around me, love, my head is on thy breast. Low words of comfort come from thee, yet my soul has no rest. For I am but a startled thing, nor can I ever be aught save a bird whose broken wing must fly away from thee. I cannot give to thee the love I gave so long ago, the love that turned and struck me down amid the blinding snow. I can but give a failing heart and weary eyes of pain, a faded mouth that cannot smile and may not laugh again. Yet keep thine arms around me, love, until I fall to sleep, then leave me, saying no goodbye, lest I might wake and weep. Without Her, by Dante Gabriel Rossetti. What of her glass without her? The blank grey, there where the pool is blind of the moon's face. Her dress without her, the tossed empty space of cloud rack whence the moon has passed away. Her paths without her, day's appointed sway, usurped by desolate night, her pillowed place without her. Tears, ah me, What for love's good grace and cold forgetfulness of night or day? What of the heart without her? Nay, poor heart, of thee what word remains ere speech be still? A wayfarer by barren ways and chill, steep ways and weary, without her thou art. Where the long cloud, the long wood's counterpart, sheds doubled up darkness up the labouring hill.